Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, I should say. So this is week 5 of facility design, and sadly, this is the last week that I will be teaching you for. I want to express my gratitude for you working with me this week. Yeah, just we got through a curveball, and we're just going to get through it. And thank you for the kind thoughts. A few of you reached out, and I really do appreciate that. Um, so for week 5, we're going to be continuing the back of house design, which we'll talk about more of the particular areas such as the dish area, receiving, storage, staff, and some of the waste disposal and recycling areas. Now, you may not think that this is one of the most important parts, but really these are really integral areas of the kitchen, and they ensure that the rest of the cooking areas work more seamlessly. So before I go into that, though, I will just give you a couple updates. So just in case you don't want to watch this video just quite yet or want to do it later, you do have until this Wednesday at midnight to submit your second assignment, which is the cafeteria. Now, if you have not submitted this yet, just a couple pieces of advice. Ensure that you put as much detail as you can in there. It's a pretty big space. It's very easy just to throw a bunch of tables that meet the 150 seat capacity, but not really think about how people would go in and out of that area. Um, so pretend that you are a person and walking through and really track your traffic movement or your customer flow as it would through that. The test will be next week. So today is the 14th. So on the 21st, you will be having a test. It is multiple choice, true and false matching. I do not believe I'm going to be putting any long answer style questions in there. Really, the major assignment and the 4 in-class assignments that you'll be doing is where the bulk of all of this material come into play. But I do think it is important that we test on a few things. And the idea is that I will be testing on questions that I think are important for you to remember as you leave this course in this program and get into the world. Now, if you have any opportunity, and I really hope you do, to have an impact on the facility and how it may operate as far as fixtures, furnitures, features, and so on, these are the questions that should really help you come up with some great solutions for your own place down the road. So it's probably going to be about 50 to 60 questions, multiple choice, true and false matching, like I said, and you have the ability to pull up all of your PowerPoint slides. So really, I wish you luck, but I do not have any fear that you will all be very successful in it. Okay, moving on. So we talked a lot about how just the people move and the food moves and just all of the different customer flow. So we also can call this the flow and spatial relationships for preparation. So we're going to look at the prep area first, and the prep area is where all the food it's after we received it, after it's gone into some sort of storage, whether it's cold storage, freezer or fridge, or it's dry storage. And then there might be some preparation that needs to happen before we apply heat or before we plate, if it's a dessert or a salad. So as it comes out of storage, it then goes into our pre-preparation. And this is generally where we take a non-processed food and process it to a point of where now it's simply we just have to add that heat for that final time and are able to serve it. So in our pre-prep areas, when you design them, there's a couple things you need to know. In relation to fridges and storage, it must be very close because you're going to be walking a lot from those storage areas to that pre-preparation area. You mainly will deal with produce, vegetables, and dry mixes. Table heights are really good from 30 to 36 feet, and long tables 6 to 8 feet are really important as well because that way you might get very large pack sizes. So a box that could be 3 feet long. And you want to be able to open that box, get all the ingredients, and pull it and put it beside you and work on it with some sort of what's the word here? Just having it all set up properly so you're not wasting steps. So you don't have to like unpack everything and then move all the boxes. Again, we're trying the science of reducing steps, reducing physical steps, as well as reducing the steps in a process to get to our final goal. One lower table is ideal for modified work employees, and then waste disposal, specifically on like rolling carts, is ideal, should be included in the layout. So this will give you a little idea of a pre-prep area. So this is for a very small kitchen. So what they have is they maybe have these steam jacketed kettles or a tilting skillet and a convection oven where they could bake bread or whatever they might need. That's not necessarily used immediately for service. So it could be you're roasting garlic. It could be all kinds of things. They have a couple sinks. So it's important to note that there is a difference between a sink that is used for thawing frozen food and a sink that is used for hand washing. A sink like this should be only used for thawing frozen food. You can have some running water on it so it thaws a little bit quicker. And you should not be washing your hands in here, and you should not be thawing food in this particular sink. This is a Hobart mixer, or mixer, I should say. It comes with a bunch of different paddles that you can use, and you may have like a food processor as well. Generally, this is okay. A lot of kitchens might not require all of these pieces of equipment as well. There is a limited amount of work tables. Often what people do is that in those sinks, if there's something thawing, they do have cutting boards or even just a thing that can be placed over it, so for more working area. But the way I look at this, you only really have a fairly small amount of workspace, and 2 people maximum would be back here working. So that gives you an idea of the space and what's being used. Where did I go? Another one is we often forget about talking about the cold line. So the hot line or the main food line is where everything, all the food and the heat's applied to these dishes, is great. And we have a great setup for it. And we looked at it before. But this could be like a cold line where you are making salads and desserts and all these kind of different things, where ensuring that your space is set up to be the most productive that they can. So here you say, you have these rolling carts where there's sheet pans, there's salad bowls, and there's finished salads on these portable carts. So they're very easy for this person, this individual, to make them and then send them. So it's all about the setup of your workspaces as well. This particular slide talks about the height. So when we think about the height of how someone works, I myself am about 6 foot. Generally, I am on the taller side of things, but not really. So most work services I'm okay with. But you could have an employee who's 5 foot. You can have an employee who's 6'10", and that's a huge range in between 2 employees. And when we think about employees, yes, we want them to do an efficient work, and that might be I want a prep cook, and I want him to stay with me for the next 5, 10, 20 years if he's willing. 20 years of working on a surface that is not the right height will actually cause a lot of issues with that person physically, and that's WSIB, that's modified work, that's losing this person because they're no longer able to do it. And while we often don't think of such long term when we're working with our employees, because we're such a transitory business, we should think about that way. So something just as the work surface height, and being able to change the work surface height for the employee based on how tall or short they are, or based on the amount of work. So heavier work that is done lower in your body and your core is much easier versus very detailed work, precision work should be much higher. And then the general stuff that we all do is light work, and that gives you an idea of the height of all of your tables. So a couple other things that we want to think about, of course, is the number of people and the types of equipment in that space. A big thing is clearance required for equipment doors. So often we're going to have big oven doors that are going to open up. We'll have refrigerator doors. We will have drawers that slide out. Those specifically are the ones that break your knees, because if you hit a door that's open, it probably will just shut. But those drawers that pull out, if you stub your toe, your knee, your ankle, whatever, on them, it could be an incident, as well as you don't know what you're carrying. Are you carrying knives? Are you carrying hot oil? This is a huge safety factor. So just ensuring there's enough clearance for people to move around these and get around these is very important. And then we want to think about the type of food that we're processing and the amount of space needed for that storage. When we talk about, again, clearance for a lot of these drawers and doors opening, what kind of aisle space do we need? So this is talking about not previous where we talked about a customer walking through the dining room or the cafeteria, but now we're talking about in the kitchen, in the hotline, where there's lots of different objects and pieces of equipment that will burn, maim, and kill you potentially. What kind of room do we need for people? So a double aisle, which means that equipment's on both sides, anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5 feet in between the two aisles of equipment. So that's with limited equipment. Double aisle with protruding equipment up to 6 feet. So 6 feet will allow maybe two different doors being open in the same area and still allowing some squeezing room in between. So read up this slide when you are designing your kitchens in the future, just to ensure that you are kind of staying within the right amount and you're providing a safe work environment, but also being smart with the use of your space. Yeah, a couple of things, temperature and humidity. Now, we've talked about it a little bit already. There are some key issues with temperature and humidity control. So cooking lines are just hot. They're always going to be. Ventilation hoods help. You can have air conditioning in there, although it will not necessarily cool the place completely, but it will help, and it will help your employees work longer, work harder, and more efficiently. And then also humidity, which is the dish room. So when people are wet and they're working in a wet environment, it's not really great for them, as well as it creates a very unsafe environment. So quick air drying areas, great room ventilation, vents as well, and moving air will be very useful in that. And this is these hood vents that we speak about so very often that are 25, probably 3,000, probably $4,000 a feet now, as prices just keep going up. So the preparation area, so this is now we're talking about the front line or the main line. So this is the main hub of the kitchen. This is where we apply heat for the last time, the food. Equipment and layout varies based on the size of kitchens. We work with what we have. Not every place is just this big empty square or rectangle and we can do whatever we want. Sometimes we must be really kind of smart with the way that we design things. Usually it's a row of equipment under hood fans on one side with a chef's table in front, with either hot and cold holding tables. So you can have cold holding tables and hot holding tables, and this is to ensure that your béarnaise and your gravies and your sauces and your steamed vegetables all stay hot for a significant amount of time, so you can keep serving them. I would say hot holding tables and cold holding tables as well, but more so hot, are more important in that retirement home, long-term care, buffet, banquet kind of establishment versus a made-to-order place like a restaurant. So depending, of course, on the style of workplace that you find yourselves in, you will see that those hot holding tables will be very important for you. This just gives you an idea of what that hotline or that hub would look like, so these are probably a cold holding table, but it could be either or. And sometimes the equipment nowadays can be either or. They got a little toaster and they have this is probably their cold holding table because it's on a refrigerated unit here. And then just all of their cooking equipment on this side underneath all of their hood vents. And this is what we would call an open kitchen. So open kitchens are fantastic. They're quite trendy, or have been trending for the last 20 years ago up until a few years ago. Everyone could see what's going on in there, and it's pretty neat. These are your heat lamps here to keep your dishes hot as well. And then now, important things about open kitchens is that you only want to show so much of the kitchen. You don't want to show the floors, and you don't want to show the counters. You only want to show the chefs working, talking, hanging out, and sometimes these chefs love it and they're singing and they're having a blast. And them plating and putting up nice looking dishes. You don't really want to show the process as much because some of the process isn't nearly as sexy as the finished plate. So just the idea, yes, open kitchens are fine, but they've set this window probably about 4 feet high, so you don't really get a view down, so you can see the actual cutting boards or the boards where they're working on, or the food that might be on the floor, or the wrappers, or things like that. So this gives you a little bit of a different view here of what that basic commercial kitchen layout would look like. It's very similar to what we just saw, where it's just a bunch of saute burners, some pasta cookers, a grill, some deep fryers and ovens on one side. So these are all of the things that would be required to be under a ventilation hood with a fire suppression. And then it basically it's an assembly line on the other side, and then a pickup window as well. Now, cool thing about this picture that we're looking at is that they can have a maximum of 7 staff during high volume and 3 staff during normal business. So these are your peaks and valleys of business. So this gives you an idea of, hey, not only have we designed this place for our regular days, we're serving a breakfast or a lunch on a Tuesday, but we've also designed it that we know how many people are going to be working on our busy Friday and Saturday nights. So just again gives you an idea of the flexibility and adaptability, universal design principles basically is what they are that we talk about, and how this could be used with 3 people and how this could be used with up to 7 people. This is just a slide about pan layouts. It's really not that important until you are a chef and you realize the importance of how you set up all of your pans. This is just something we would talk about in class, but I'm going to move on from that. Again, just another image of a different style of kitchen where they still have kind of those main chef's tables where they're putting everything together, but then also a bit of an L back kitchen where they have these kettles on this depressed floor, but as well as just all of your regular pieces of equipment. So just a little different look. Cool thing is though, they also are giving you all the measurements. So they do show you that these are 36 inches, sorry, 42 inches deep, and 3 feet 9 inches is the space that they've given for everyone to work in. And it just gives you an idea of the space that it would take up to build something like this. And I usually put this in here just to show you that this is what people think kitchens look like in like a commercial property, but they are most definitely not. This is like a cooking class one. So a couple of things about the impact and design on what we're doing. So first for safety. Now we've talked about it a little bit with protruding equipment and carrying knives and hot oil and all kinds of stuff like that. Design is the number one thing that you can do and tweaking your design to ensure that you have a safe space. Now that's also for the guest. It's also for the customer and just for the food as well. So ensuring that food doesn't have to travel farther than it has to because of contamination issues. So design can support safe and sanitary food handling. It can prevent employees from being injured and can help avoid, contain, and suppress uncontrolled fires. Labor costs are very high in our business and they're only ever increasing. Our minimum wage has gone up, but that also has caused a ripple effect that while some of our employees are minimum wage, many of our cooks and chefs in the back of house are that next level up. So they're making $17 to $20 an hour. Some are up to 25 if they're maybe like a sous chef or an assistant kitchen manager or something like that. Now, when everyone receives, minimum wage employees receive, hey, I went from $13 to $14 to $15 over a space of 2 years, and you have your other cooks who are like, I make $16 and in 2 years I haven't received that raise. So this ripple effect that's happening everywhere, not to mention all the front of house staff are basically on server wage, which means they all got a raise. Labor costs just go through the roof. So while we can put some of that cost back on the customer, that's not ideally what you do for every cost because eventually the customer will not see the value of that product anymore. I don't mind paying $15 for a pound of wings. I'm not paying $22 for a pound of wings. So eventually they'll say it's not worth it. So labor costs are between 25 and 40% of your operating expenses. How you are efficient is, again, reducing the steps of the process and reducing the steps that they physically have to take to create their meals, their drinks, to bus a table, to clean a dish, whatever it might be, reducing the time that it takes so they are more efficient. Yes, that will lead to less staff hours, which will lead to less hours for your staff and less employment, but you are a business and you're trying to make money. And if I can run a very good operation and provide good customer service with 18 employees instead of 22 on a Friday night, I want to do that. Where am I? Okay, next one is ease of sanitation. If it's not easy to clean, and I've said this before, if it's not easy to clean, they're not going to clean it. So the right materials that are easy to clean, easy to sanitize, the right work areas or workspaces that are organized and not cluttered, using wall hung equipment and locating utility services in the walls so that floors are not full of clutter, garbage disposals, garbages on wheels and recycling areas on wheels that you can move around with you. Just make it easy for them to clean and they will clean it. If you make it difficult and dim and grungy and old equipment and just it and not enough supplies or the wrong supplies, they're not going to do it and everything is going to go downhill. The morale, the quality of the service, everything. Supervision. So, usually in class we get into this a little bit more, but you probably know this at a workplace when the general manager or the big boss is in that building, work just seems to get done better, faster, more efficiently. People don't screw off and lollygag, as they call it. I don't think I've ever used that word before. When it comes to supervision, ensuring that you can see the production line easily, so office with lines of sight to the prep areas, is really good. Minimizing number of walls and partitions between functioning areas, specifically in your front of house dining areas, your cafeteria floor, your dining floor, and just having the optics that you can be supervised, that you are not on your own, is good for an employee, because it also is a lonely thing if you're shut off in this little dishwashing area and no one's ever back there. So opening up supervision is good, and it really helps cut things like theft, which does happen in every single restaurant. It might be intentional or non-intentional, and you might ask, what is non-intentional theft? And that is just like making yourself a sandwich while you're on the line. A lot of cooks or managers will probably be okay with their kitchen staff having food, but they want to know about it. They still want to be able to give permission to do that. It's not a free-for-all. So yeah, we have a staff meal that you can have, but don't cook the lobster or T-bone steak for yourself. So have a process for that kind of stuff. Same with a bartender. When it comes to bartenders, you want to be able to allow them to buy someone a drink, but you don't want them to give someone a drink, right? So there's a difference between that. Us as the company is actually spending money to buy a customer a drink or an appetizer or whatever it might be, but we will not give away free alcohol because that's where it gets in trouble. So allowing a bartender like a spend, like a float. Hey, you have $30 a night to spend on creating a better guest and customer experience. That works well. And then flows of materials and personnel. So again, this is what we've talked about. It's the three major things in a kitchen: movement of employees from one functional area to another, movement of food, specifically raw food, from storage to prep to service, and then movement of dishes back from the dishwashing system back into the service area. And we've looked at this before, but again, here it is, just to give you an idea of the flow of people and food. So just a few more spaces I'll talk about. So the receiving area, it's in the back house. It's the very first area from the back door that you would enter into. There's a couple things that you should have in this receiving area. One of which could be a scale for weighing items that you get in, because often we will purchase 40 pounds of potatoes. So sometimes we want to weigh them to ensure that the people that we are buying it from are legitimate and honest in their dealings. Also a table so we can stack things up here, so we can read labels, so we can check invoices, and just ensure that we have everything that we need. This space here is 8 feet by 8 feet and would do well for a smaller to medium-sized restaurant. And then we go into storage, which is a bunch of different options. We've looked at them a little bit already. There is dry and canned food storage. You would have paper and cleaning supplies storage. Now, one thing about chemicals is that chemicals do need to be stored in a separate container or in a lockable container away from food. You have your refrigerated storage, and then also maybe some of your utensil and other equipment storage. This would be the same as fridges as well as a dry storage area. This right here would work very well for a small restaurant. It's 96 square feet, which is like 10 feet by 9 feet essentially. And this gives you lots of storage all along here with a single door open and close. And you can get a little bit bigger. So this is about a little over double, so 225 square feet, but it gives you a lot more room and a lot more storage capability as well. So just bear that in mind when you start designing places. What kind of size do we need? And again, cleaning supplies must have their own storage area, like a large cabinet such as this that is lockable. And you would often see these maybe back towards like the dish washing area. So we've already talked about refrigeration, so I'm not going to go into it in detail. Again, these are just some of the refrigeration types and what they might look like. And the final thing we'll talk about here today, well, one of the second last thing we'll talk about is warewashing or a dishwashing area. Again, you might not think this is a complicated process, and it really isn't. You get dirty dishes, you clean them, and you get them back into the cycle. But having it set up properly it'll be easier to hire, it'll be easier to keep good dishwashers, and it's the hardest position to fill because it's the least glorified position in a restaurant. And there's a lot of safety concerns with this area as well. So some of the things that you should know is that it should be located closely to the entrance from the dining area, so people don't have to walk a lot once they come in with all of their heavy plates, as well as close to the preparation area, because that's where the plates are going to go to get filled with food again. Lots of table space, so 60% for soiled, which 30 dishes, 40% for the clean ones. A glass dishwasher is a good option because a lot of times if you're putting dirty plates in the same dishwasher with food, we don't clean these machines always as often as we should. There might be food particles, and you don't want really nice wine glasses getting horseradish in it. There's always a hose and nozzle system where you can pull down a hose and spray everything. It's common. It's not great for resource conservation, but it is the most common. And oversized sinks are great, especially if we have large kitchen equipment or large pots and pans. This right here is a bird's eye view of a dishwasher area where they would come in. They would drop all of their soiled dishes here, and their soiled silverware into here where it soaks and just kind of gets all the food particles off. This particular one is a compost, so you'd scrape all the food and all the other stuff on here. Then this is the spray, the hose and nozzle spray everything down. There is a pre-wash tank and then a 2-tank dishwashing machine, so it just follows along here, and it comes out on this clean dish table, which after they dry for a little bit, and they usually just sit there to dry for a bit until it fills up, they'll be loaded into dish racks, and these dish racks will go back into the preparation areas for service. So it's a fairly simple process, but there's a lot of pieces in here. This gives you an even better idea of what this might look like. So there's all kinds of information here. Again, I don't want to go through it, and I'm sure you can read, but it's really nice to see all of the different systems that they have to ensure that everything keeps it nice and clean and airtight and watertight where it needs to be. And then, of course, you have to decide what kind of dishwasher do you need. As I said before, we have a flight type conveyor at the Casino-Rama, which services all of the banquet halls and 3 restaurants in just one area. There's 7 or 10 restaurants in there. It's a monster, but it's well over $100,000. And there's 2 of them actually, 2 flights, one for glassware, one for just plates, and it's a monster. Now, usually single tank or a 2-tank conveyor is the most popular that you'll see. They're great. They just kind of self-load. The conveyor belt goes. It's on sensors, so you don't need to open and close the dishwasher a lot. They'll just go through, and that's what you'll see at most places. 2-tank is what the Keg Berrien restaurant did. It's a very popular restaurant. It's very busy. They have somewhere like 900 covers in a night, so 900 guests in a night, and their 2-tank conveyor belt does the job no problem. And this would be a 2-tank right here. This would be a single one. But these are the pull down ones, so it's not on a conveyor, sorry. So this is just the pull down where it doesn't wash until you pull it down, lock it in. These, rather, they just catch on a little sensor and then they just slowly move their way through just like that. And that's your flight conveyor belt. And then there's a couple other areas that we also want to talk about. You do need an office, and this is going to be for your particular work that you are as a manager. So you're doing all your invoices and computer work and schedules and whatever you might need. Employee restrooms are a must. You need one toilet for every 15 employees. Really, just put a male and a female in there. Call them unisex, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But put two in there, two separate areas for changing. You'll just be happy you did. And then we also need trash and food storage, often located in the back. So we're not bad in Canada because we are hot in the summer, of course, but we also have winters, and you can keep your garbage outside, and it's not that smelly or anything else. In some areas, in hot regions, they have cooled back rooms, but not really. You won't really see that here. And just ensure that you have those areas, and it's typically a fenced-in area because people don't want to see the cooks outside dirty and their food drenched clothing and having smokes and whatever else they're doing back there. So you kind of enclose it and make it look nice and professional. The employee locker room and toilet, again, I said, try to have 2 washrooms and then an area just for people to store their stuff. Never in all of these restaurants that I've been to, there's hardly ever enough room for the employees to have a locker room, have their own area. And I know it costs money, but you will just have happier employees who are more productive and get along better with each other if they're not falling over each other, if they don't have any room to put their coats and their boots and everything else because we have winters and we need lots of clothing and bags and everything else. Have it lockable so people feel safe so they can bring in stuff because servers are making a lot of money. Some of your staff might have very expensive phones and whatever else. So just to have that stuff. And finally, I know this is strange and it's a weird part to put it in here, but put as many hand washing sinks in this place as possible. Put them everywhere. Anywhere there's a little hole in a wall where there's not really anything being used there, put a hand washing sink and a garbage underneath it. You just need it, and safety is a huge concern, specifically now and going forward that, our whole world's been turned upside down and people will have a phobia of disease and viruses and bacteria, and we just got to ensure that we be as safe and we look as safe as possible. And then just this last slide just shows you kind of like that restaurant layout with that back area that they have all fenced in. Some sample trash enclosures. This is that cooling room that I spoke about that we probably would never see. And then just some of the ways that we would store some of our old oil as well. My dogs are having a freak out. So that's basically it here for today. So it's 32 minutes. Test next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So same time here, sharp. You will be allowed 2 hours in which to complete it. So you'll have from 6 to 8 p.m. Please log in and get started right away. Other than that, please email me if you have any questions, and I will get to them as soon as I can, I promise.